His wife had been poisoning his food for 3 weeks. He figured it out, but he didn't call the police. Instead, he invited her to a blind dinner, where each dish represented something she'd poisoned him with. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Enjoy watching. Minho sits in his office. He's not working. He just sits and listens to the silence. There are no sounds in the house. No maid's footsteps. No music. No voices from the television. The silence is too complete. He turns his head toward the window. In the courtyard, his wife, So-yeon, stands by the rose bushes. She's trimming dried flowers with pruning shears. She's wearing light-colored clothing. Her movements are calm and confident. She looks beautiful and carefree. But Minho feels no peace. For 3 weeks now, something has been wrong with his body. He tires quickly, for no apparent reason. He feels nauseous every day after lunch. There's a constant strange taste in his mouth, as if he's been holding coins. He drinks water, but the taste doesn't go away. He looks at So-yeon and feels not love, but wariness. The silence in the house now seems false to him. Minho begins to pay close attention to what is happening at the table. He notices that So-yeon always brings him food herself now, especially soup at lunch. Previously, the maid did that. "This will give you strength, my love," So-yeon says, placing a plate in front of him. She smiles, but her smile doesn't reach her eyes. Her eyes are focused on the plate, not on him. Minho shifts his gaze to the chef, Changmin. Changmin is standing in the doorway to the dining room, looking at the floor. When Minho picks up a spoon, Changmin abruptly turns away and walks into the kitchen. The next day, Minho watches Changmin's hands. The cook places a roast in front of him. The dish is heavy, but Changmin's hands are visibly shaking. The spoon in his apron jingles. At that moment, So-yeon is straightening a vase on the table. She doesn't look at the cook's trembling hands, but Minho sees that she knows. She knows why he's shaking. At first, Minho doesn't want to believe his thoughts. They seem wild to him. This is his wife. They've been together for many years. But his health continued to deteriorate. Dizziness joined the weakness and nausea. Once, he stood up from his chair, and the room swam before his eyes. He grabbed the table. So-yeon immediately ran to him. "Darling, what's wrong?" she asked. She took his hand. Her palm was cold and dry. "Nothing. I just stood up suddenly," Minho said. The next day, he didn't show up for lunch. He said he had no appetite. So-yeon brought him some soup in his office. "At least a little," she insisted. "You have to eat." Minho pretended to eat. As soon as she left, he poured the soup into the sink in his bathroom. He started doing this every day. He'd pretend to eat, then spill the food. He'd ask his driver to buy him simple meals: boxed rice, baked chicken, bottles of water. He'd eat these in his office, secretly. After 4 days, the dizziness passed. After a week, the nausea subsided. The metallic taste in my mouth was almost gone. And then the doubts died. A firm, clear certainty took their place. He wasn't being hounded by illness. He was being hounded by people. In his own home, Minho no longer doubts. Now he needs facts. He calls someone unrelated to his main business. It's a specialist who checks the quality of goods arriving at his restaurants. Minho tells him briefly, the food in his house needs to be tested for foreign substances. The plan is simple. The next day, Minho says he's leaving for a meeting until the evening. He pretends to leave, but returns through the back door. He hides in a small room next to the kitchen, used for storing cleaning supplies. The door there has a ventilation grill, and part of the kitchen is visible through it. He watches. He sees So-yeon come into the kitchen. Changmin is making soup. So-yeon is standing nearby. She says something quietly. Changmin nods without looking at her. Then So-yeon takes a small bottle from her robe pocket. She doesn't open it. She simply places it next to the stove, on the spice rack. Changmin takes the bottle when she leaves. He adds something from it to the soup, which is almost ready. His face is gray with tension. An hour later, when the house is empty, Minho's human enters the kitchen. He's wearing gloves. He carefully takes the vial from the shelf. He also takes a sample from the pot of soup cooling on the stove. The answer arrives that evening, in the form of an encrypted message. The same substance was found in the liquid from the vial and in the soup. It doesn't have a rapid effect. It accumulates in the body gradually, day after day, weakening all systems. It leads to severe consequences. Medical terms mean nothing to Minho. Only one thing matters. It's poisoning. Slow, calculated, domestic. Minho sits in his office in complete darkness. He holds a framed photograph in his hand. It's of him and So-yeon at the seaside several years ago. She's laughing, snuggled close to him. He felt safe then. Now he looks at her smile in the photograph, and something freezes in his chest. The warmth, the anxiety, the last vestiges of doubt, all of it fades. Only a cold, hard mass remains. His heart no longer beats with excitement. It beats steadily and slowly, like a machine. His feelings for her have turned to stone, heavy and lifeless. Changmin is brought to him late at night, when the entire house is asleep. Two quiet men usher the cook into the office through a secret passage from the garage. Changmin is pale. He looks as if he hasn't slept for days. As soon as the door closes, Changmin falls to his knees. He doesn't wait for questions. Tears stream down his face. "Boss, I'm sorry," he begins, his voice breaking. "I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't mean to." Minho sits silently at the table. He doesn't ask the cook to get up. He just looks at him. Changmin exhales, pressing his forehead to the carpet. "Ms. Soyeon, she has information about my daughter, about her studies abroad. The address, the schedule, the route to college, everything." Changmin gasps as he tries to speak further. "She showed me pictures. She said something bad would happen to my girl. An accident. An attack. I don't know. If I refuse, if I tell anyone. She threatened me with this every day. She gave me this substance, and she told me how much to add. I didn't know what to do. I had no choice. She controlled everything. She made sure I ate the same soup as you. She watched me." Minho listens. Each word falls clearly and distinctly into the silence of the office. They confirm what he already knew. But this time it's not just a guess. It's a confession. Minho finally asks. His voice is completely even, emotionless. Changmin lifts his tear-stained face. "I was scared. I thought you wouldn't believe me. Or she'd managed to do something to my daughter before you could stop her. She said she had people everywhere. I was just scared for my child." Minho leans back in his chair. He trusts the chef. The fear in his eyes is real. He's not an actor. He's a pawn. Anger surges through Minho, but it's not a hot wave. It's a quiet, chilling feeling. It doesn't boil, but settles inside, freezing everything else. His mind works clearly, analyzing his options. He looks at the trembling Changmin and sees not a traitor, but another victim. A tool in Soyeon's hands. Punishing him means playing by her rules. A display of brute force. "Get up!" Minho says. Changmin struggles to his feet, not believing his ears. "You're leaving tonight," Minho continues. "You'll take your daughter. My people will provide you with new documents, tickets, and money. You'll disappear. Forever. If I ever hear from you again, or if even a single word of this story leaks out, the ending will be far less merciful. Understood?" Changmin nods, speechless between relief and new fear. "They'll take you out now. Pack only the essentials. You'll be in the car in an hour." The cooks are taken away. Minho is left alone again. Now his thoughts are focused on Soyeon. A quick, simple execution is too little. It won't show her the extent of her mistake. She was playing a quiet, sneaky game with him, drawn out over time. She wanted him to slowly weaken, lose control, perhaps blame it on illness. She wanted to remain in the shadows. Her plan was subtle. His response had to be precise. It had to strike not at her body, but at her confidence, at her sense of superiority, at the very idea that she had outplayed him. He wants her to understand everything, to realize that he knows every detail, to see in his eyes not pain, but cold knowledge. And most importantly, he wants her to feel the same thing she was preparing for him, not pain, but helplessness, not shock, but the slow, inexorable realization that the trap has snapped shut, that the dinner you cooked for someone else you will have to eat yourself. He forms a plan. He begins to think through the details, the date, the occasion, the setting, every word he will say, every move he will anticipate. This will not be revenge in a fit of rage. This will be a planned demonstration, a lesson, the last thing they will share in this marriage. Their wedding day arrives, exactly 9 years. The house smells of fresh flowers, delivered that morning on Minho's orders. Large bouquets of white orchids stand in the living room. Soyeon spends a lot of time in front of the mirror. She chooses a dress, dark blue, long, simple, yet expensive. She carefully applies her makeup. Her movements are calm and contented. She thinks about a gift. Last year, Minho gave her a sapphire necklace. The year before, the keys to a sports car. She wonders what will happen this time. Perhaps a share in one of his new businesses. Or a trip to a private island? She smiles at her reflection. Everything is going according to plan. His health is failing. He has become more withdrawn and compliant. Soon, he will be weak enough to hand over control of key accounts to her, citing fatigue. And then, she has already thought of everything. Minho enters the bedroom without knocking. He's wearing a dark suit. He has a soft, slightly tired smile on his face. The same one he's had for the past few weeks, the smile of someone struggling with illness, but trying to hold on for the sake of their loved ones. "You look beautiful," he says, his voice quiet, almost gentle. Soyeon turns to him, beaming. "Thank you, darling. You too. She waits for him to pull a small box or envelope from his pocket, but he simply comes closer and looks at her. In his eyes, she sees a hazy warmth, the same one she has learned to imitate. Minho begins. He slowly lifts his hand and touches her cheek. His fingers are warm. I've been thinking a lot about our day, about these 9 years. So-yeon places her hand over his, pressing it against her skin. Me too, darling. These were wonderful years. You've been a huge support to me, he continues, his voice ringing with sincerity. Especially lately, when I've been not quite at my best. Your concern means more to me than you can imagine. Something inside So-yeon rejoices. His words are music to her ears. They confirm that he suspects nothing, that he is grateful to her for the very care that is destroying him. So, Minho says, running his thumb over her cheekbone, I've prepared something special for you. A very special gift. You really deserve it. So-yeon holds her breath. There it is. What is it? Show me, she asks, making a playful expression. Minho shakes his head, his smile turning a little mysterious. No, it's a surprise, and it requires preparation, not the usual kind. It's not just a box you can open here. Oh, you're intriguing, So-yeon laughs. Her mind is racing. What could it be? Some kind of excursion? A skydive? Something extreme she's always wanted to try? This will require a little trust from you, Minho says, looking her straight in the eye. His gaze seems open, even vulnerable, and a willingness to accept the rules of the game, just for today. Promise? Of course I promise, So-yeon replies immediately. She can't wait to find out what he's come up with. The more extravagant the gift, the stronger his affection, the less guarded he becomes. Then great, Minho says, his smile widening. He takes a step back. The first rule of a surprise is that you can't see anything until we're there. And keep your hands busy too, so you don't knock the blindfold off in your impatience. So-yeon laughs, her eyes shining with genuine curiosity and excitement. What's the secret? Are you planning to steal me from yourself? In a way, yes, he replies mysteriously, but it's all your choice. Remember how you once said you missed adventure? The unexpected? She nods, though she can barely recall such a conversation. She said a lot of things to maintain the image. Then Minho reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a long silk ribbon. It's bright red, the color of passion and celebration. The silk shimmers in the lamplight. The ribbon looks expensive and beautiful. So-yeon looks at her, and her smile falters for a moment. The thought of being tied up, even in a game, makes her a little wary, but she quickly dismisses it. This is Minho, her obedient, sick husband. What could he do? And the very idea seems piquant, almost romantic, a game of trust on their anniversary. With this? She asks, touching the end of the ribbon. The silk is slippery and cool. Yes, says Minho. Later, when it gets dark, I'll blindfold you with this ribbon. Then I'll gently tie your hands in front of you with it, so you'll be comfortable. And then I'll take you to the very place where your surprise awaits. He looks at her, and in his eyes she sees the very softness she'd been waiting for. But if she looked more closely, she might notice that this softness doesn't dissolve deep within his eyes, but lies on the surface, like thin ice, and beyond it, absolute, bottomless emptiness. Trust me, he says quietly, almost in a whisper. And that decides everything. The words, trust me, sound like an assurance, like a vow, and she believes them. She has won. He is completely in her power, without even realizing it. Okay, she gives in with a theatrical sigh. I'm in your hands, but the surprise has to be worth it, Minho says, slowly winding the ribbon around his palm. The silk glides silently. This will be the most memorable gift you'll ever receive. You'll never forget it. He speaks these words in an even, calm tone, and they are the pure truth. That evening, Minho approaches her in the living room. She's already dressed. She's wearing a warm coat over her dress. He's holding a red silk ribbon. Ready? He asks. His voice is quiet and gentle. So-yeon nods, smiling. She feels a slight thrill, like before a performance. Then close your eyes, he says. She closes it. She hears his footsteps. Then she feels the touch of cool silk on her eyelids. His fingers work carefully, without fuss. He ties the ribbon at the back, the knot not pressing. The light from beneath the blindfold disappears completely. Now only darkness lies before her. Hands, he says softly. Give me your hands. She holds them out, palms pressed together as if in prayer. He wraps the tape around her wrists several times. He doesn't pull hard. The bandage gently restrains her hands, but doesn't constrict them. She can move her fingers. It's not the binding of a captive, but a gentle, ritualistic gesture, just like in a game. That's it, he whispers right into her ear. His breath is warm. Let's go. He takes her elbow and leads her. She walks carefully, trusting him. He guides her through the hallway toward the exit. She hears him open the heavy front door. She feels the cool night air on her face. Then he helps her into the car, holding her head so it doesn't hit her. She hears her door slam, then the driver's door. The engine starts almost silently. The car starts moving. Soyeon sits in the darkness, smiling. She tries to guess the route by the turns, but Minho drives slowly and smoothly, deliberately confusing the path. At first, she hears the hum of the city, then it fades. The road becomes smoother, without frequent stops. They are out of town. "You'll see everything soon," he whispers again. She can't see his face, but she hears a slight animation in his voice. She thinks it's the excitement of the surprise. Her anticipation grows. The car finally stops. Soyeon hears Minho get out, then her door opens. "We're here," he says. "Give me your hand." He takes her by her bound wrists and helps her out. Beneath her feet is not asphalt, but something hard and uneven, like compacted earth or old cobblestone. The air is different here, cold, damp, smelling of rotting leaves, damp earth, and something else. Metal? Concrete? He leads her behind him. She hears his footsteps, and her own. Then a creaking sound is heard, heavy, drawn out, like the opening of an old, rarely used door. The creaking echoes, indicating empty space. He leads her forward. The floor beneath her is now a concrete slab. The echo of their footsteps grows louder. The smell of dampness intensifies, and the scent of mold and dust assaults her nose. It hasn't been cleaned or aired out in a long time. She feels the cold seeping through the thin soles of her shoes and under her coat. She instinctively tenses. "Darling, where are we?" she asks. Her voice sounds louder than it should in this emptiness, and for the first time, there's a note of alarm in it. This doesn't feel like the entrance to a fancy restaurant or a yacht dock. This smells of abandonment. "At the place of your surprise," Minho answers calmly. His voice doesn't change. It sounds as even and quiet as before. But now, in this cold silence, his calm seems strange to her. He doesn't try to reassure her, doesn't say, "Don't be afraid." He simply states a fact. He leads her a few more steps, then stops. "Sit down," he says. He helps her find a chair with his hands. The chair is heavy, wooden, with a hard back. She sits down. The seat is cold even through the fabric of her dress. Now she sits in complete darkness and silence. She hears only her own breathing and distant sounds outside. Maybe the wind, maybe the distant hum of cars. And then, his footsteps. He's walking away. She hears another door open, this one lighter, perhaps metal. Then he comes back. He walks slowly, with a heavy gait. She hears the soft thud of ceramics against wood. He places something on the table right in front of her, once, then again, and again. He arranges things with methodical precision. Judging by the sound, they're definitely plates. Several plates. They're not light porcelain saucers, but something more substantial. You can hear him setting something heavier down, maybe a saucepan or a tureen. Then the soft clang of metal utensils as he sets them down next to him. He doesn't say anything. He just sets the table. The sounds in the cold, echoing basement seem unnaturally loud to her. Every touch of the dishes on the table reverberates in her bones. Her anticipation had completely evaporated. It was replaced by a growing sense of unease. This didn't feel like preparing for a romantic surprise. It felt like table setting, a strange, gloomy table setting in complete darkness. She sat blindfolded and with her hands bound, while her husband silently placed plates in front of her. The game suddenly didn't seem fun anymore. Minho finishes setting out the dishes. A silence falls, so complete that Soyeon can hear her own heartbeat in her ears. She sits motionless, waiting. He approaches her from behind. She shudders, feeling his closeness. His fingers find the knot of the silk ribbon at the nape of her neck. He takes his time. He unties it slowly, almost carefully. The tape loosens its grip and falls from her eyes. Soyeon blinks, squinting at the sudden light. The light is dim, coming from a single bare bulb under the low concrete ceiling. At first, she sees only blurry outlines. Then her vision focuses. She sees bare concrete walls, coated in gray paint with dark patches of dampness showing through. She sees a heavy metal door with rusty hinges. She sees a concrete floor covered in dust and small stones. The air is cold and still, and right in front of her is a simple wooden table. There's no tablecloth. On it sits a row of familiar dishes in simple white dishes. She recognizes a tureen with handles. Next to it is a deep plate of stewed meat and vegetables. Further on, a platter of baked fish with a lightly browned crust, and several small bowls with side dishes. It all looks as if it just came straight from their kitchen. Exactly. At first, her brain refuses to believe it. It tries to find a logical explanation. Maybe Minho recreated their favorite dishes? Maybe this is a nostalgic dinner? But no. She won't just recognize recipes. She'll recognize these very dishes, That very fish that Chang Min cooked on Tuesdays. That very stew with a special sauce that she personally brought to Minho's office, saying it was for strength. That soup that always sat on the stove while she watched her husband eat it. This is not a gift. It is a collection of evidence. Every dish is a day she slipped him poison. Every plate is a lie she told with a smile. They stand before her, still warm, exuding familiar, once comforting aromas. Now those smells make her nauseous. Fear slowly rises from the pit of her stomach, catching her breath. It spreads across her face, washing away her makeup, causing her eyes to widen. She looks away from the table to Minho. He stands next to her, watching her. His expression is a mask she can't read. Her lips tremble. She tries to gather the remnants of her composure, to feign bewilderment, frightened innocence. What? What is this? She gasps, her voice hoarse, almost a whisper. She moves to gesture toward the table, but her wrists are still bound with red ribbon. The gesture, bound and helpless, looks pathetic. Where's my present, Minho? What is this place? He doesn't answer right away. He looks at her bound hands, as if only now remembering them. He comes closer. She instinctively leans back in the chair, but he doesn't care. He takes her hands in his. His fingers are as careful as before when he tied the ribbon. He finds the end and slowly, without jerking, unwinds the silk from her wrist. The ribbon falls into his palm. He places it carefully on the edge of the table, next to the plate. Only now does she see his face fully. All the softness, that gentle weariness that had been on his face all day, was gone. His face now resembled a block of stone. His features had sharpened. His eyes looked at her without a single spark of warmth. It wasn't the look of a husband. It was the look of a judge or an executioner. The gift before you, So-yeon, he says finally. His voice is quiet, but in the silence of the basement, each word rings out with metallic clarity. Everything you see on this table, that is your gift. She looks at the food again, then back at him. Her mind is racing, searching for a way out, an excuse, any loophole. I don't understand. Is this our food? You cooked our dinner here? It's so weird, Minho. Her words are halting, her sentences trailing off. No, he interrupts her, his words cutting through the air like a knife. I didn't cook it. Chang Min made it, according to your orders. Your exact recipe, with your exact additions. At the word additives, she freezes. All her acting skills desert her. The color drains completely from her face. You know what I mean, he continues, taking a step closer to the table and lightly touching the rim of the tureen with his hand. You know perfectly well. You've been bringing me this for weeks. You stood by and watched me eat it, and told me I needed to gain strength. He pauses, letting each word sink in. And I, fool that I am, believed you, until my body began to fail, until I realized that my strength was fading with every spoonful of this soup. Your soup, So-yeon tries to speak, but only a quiet, meaningless sound comes out. The fear that was once fright now turns into real animal panic. He knows everything. I checked the food, So-yeon. I hired someone. I saw the report. I talked to Chang Min. He told me everything. How you blackmailed him with his daughter. How you gave him a bottle and told him how many drops to add where. He says this without malice, without raising his voice. He simply lays out the facts, as if reading her an indictment. And that makes it even more terrifying. His calm isn't the calm of forgiveness. It's the calm of a man who's already made up his mind, who cares about nothing but executing his plan. She sits pressed against the back of her chair, unable to tear her gaze away from his icy eyes. The game is over. Her game is lost by the most terrible score. This is a gift before you, So-yeon, he repeats, his voice even, methodical, like the booming ticking of a metronome in this concrete box. This is your dinner, the very same one you so carefully prepared for me with Chang Min. Every single dish, from the first spoonful of soup to the last piece of fish. Everything you poured so lovingly into my plate. I had the exact same portions prepared for you, the same freshness, with the same ingredients. He gestures around the table, like a tour guide introducing the exhibits at a horror museum. She looks at the steam still rising from the soup, and it seems to her like smoke from hell. You wanted me to eat this for weeks. You wanted me to grow weak, to lose my mind, maybe just to fall asleep and never wake up. This was your project, your quiet domestic work. And now the time has come to take the test of professional suitability for a poisoner wife. He doesn't shout, he doesn't loom over her. He stands slightly away, and that makes his words even more unbearable. There's no emotional outburst in them, no way to wait it out, no way to react to it with tears or justifications. There's only cold, inexorable logic. He's turned her crime into a menu, and now he's set that menu before her. Soyeon makes a sudden movement. The instinct for self-preservation finally breaks through the paralysis of terror. She tries to jump up from her chair, push the table away, break free. But her body is numb from fear and sitting for so long. Minho's leaden hand lands on top of him. Not a blow, just pressure. An irresistible, calm pressure that presses her back into the chair seat. His fingers don't tighten. They just rest, but there's so much undeniable strength in them that any struggle seems ridiculous. Sit, he says, just one word, and she freezes. Changmin told me everything. Everything. I know the truth from beginning to end, from the first threat to the last drop in my soup. He leans down slightly, so his face is level with hers. He looks her straight in the eyes, and she sees not anger in them, but contempt. Cold, bottomless contempt. I know you blackmailed him. You found his weakness, his daughter. You compiled a dossier on her. You found out where she lived, where she studied, who her friends were, and you showed him these papers. You told him she would have an accident if he didn't listen. You kept him in fear for the only thing he had. Minho straightens up, removing his hand from her shoulder, but she no longer tries to run. He had no choice, Soyeon. He wasn't your accomplice. He was your victim, just like me. The only difference is, he pauses dramatically, that you had a choice. You had a choice every day you looked at me, smiled, and brought me this poison. You had a choice not to start this at all. You could have simply left, but you chose it. You chose slow self-destruction. You wanted everything. My death, my fortune, and clean hands. It was your choice. Soyeon is silent. Her mouth is slightly open, but no sound comes out. She simply stares ahead, but she doesn't see the table or the concrete walls. She sees collapse, complete and utter. Her eyes are wide open, and there are no tears in them. There is only pure, undiluted terror. Horror not of punishment, but of the scale of failure. She had calculated everything. It seemed she had calculated everything. The cook's blackmail was perfect. He had no connections to complain to, and he was mortally weak. Her husband was busy, tired, and trusted her. The poison was chosen so that the symptoms resembled illness, not poisoning. She played the role of the caring wife flawlessly, but she had calculated one thing: his intelligence, his cold, suspicious nature, which had helped him survive in his world. She thought he would weaken both physically and mentally, but he proved stronger. He proved smarter. The game is lost. Not just lost, it's been exposed so completely that any lie, any excuse, now seems like pathetic babble. He doesn't question, doesn't doubt. He states, he didn't bring her here for questioning. He brought her here for sentencing. She understands this with absolute chilling clarity. The red ribbon on the table, these plates of food, this basement, none of this is a coincidence. This is a performance, carefully orchestrated down to the last detail. And she is not an actress in it. She is a spectator, forced onto the stage and performing in the most terrifying scene of all, the scene of her own unmasking. She slowly moves her gaze from his face to the food. Now she sees more than just the dishes. She sees in each plate her own miscalculation, her own arrogance, her own greed. She sees the very lie she thought so elegant, and now that lie stands before her, and she must eat it. Literally, silence hangs in the basement, thick and heavy, like swamp gas. Soyeon looks at the plates, then at Minho. A final spark of resistance flares in her eyes, not strength, but the desperate stubbornness of a cornered animal. I won't eat this, she says. Her voice is quiet, hoarse, but there's a challenge in it. It's not a request, it's a declaration. She curls her fingers in her lap, her nails digging into her palms. She thinks she still has that choice: to refuse, to hold his gaze, to force him to use brute force, which might evoke at least something human in him, even if it's just disgust at the process itself. Minho doesn't move. He's not angry, not threatening. He simply looks at her, and his gaze betrays something worse than anger, the disappointment of a scientist whose experiment has yielded a predictable, banal result. You will, he replies just as quietly, almost in a whisper, but this whisper cuts through the silence like steel wire. This is not a request, Soyeon. This is your punishment, not my decision. This is a direct consequence of your choice. You decided that this food is fit for a human, for your husband. Now you must prove it. You will try everything you prepared for me, every dish, every spoonful. You will feel on your tongue the taste of your own calculation. He pauses, letting the words sink in. You can resist. I won't hit you, but we'll just sit here, an hour, 2. A night. Until you realize the only way out of this room is through this table, through each of these plates. I'm patient. As you can imagine, I have a lot of free time now. Malice in his voice. There's only cold iron determination. He's built a labyrinth for her with only one exit, and that exit is through her own poison. And she knows he's not joking. He'll sit here and wait, days, if necessary, until thirst, hunger, and cold break her, and she reaches for the spoon herself. But that won't be resistance. It'll be humiliating surrender, and he'll force her to capitulate now, preserving the last pitiful remnants of her will. Minho approaches the table. He slowly, with almost ceremonial care, picks up a large porcelain spoon. He dips it into the tureen. The spoon thuds dully against the bottom. He scoops up a spoonful of the thick soup, laced with meat and carrots. A thin stream of steam rises into the chilly basement air. He turns to her. In his hand, the spoon looks like a surgical instrument. He brings it to her lips. The distance between the spoon and her mouth is no more than a palm. "Open your mouth, So-yeon," he says. His gaze is implacable. There is no mercy, no doubt, only anticipation of the order being carried out. So-yeon presses her lips together so hard they turn white. She squeezes her eyes shut. Her entire body tenses in a single surge of refusal. She considers swiping the spoon away, but her arms feel like lead. Fear paralyzes her, but he's in no hurry. He doesn't try to force her teeth apart. He simply holds the spoon still. The steam from the soup touches her skin, and that warm, familiar scent of herbal chicken broth now seems like the scent of a grave. A second passes. Another. 10. The silence in the basement becomes palpable. It presses on her eardrums, her temples, her chest. It is louder than any scream, more convincing than any threat. This silence tells her, "You are alone here, with you only him and the fruits of your labor, and this will last forever." Slowly, as if against her will, her eyelids lift. She sees his hand holding the spoon. She sees his calm, impassive face. She understands that this is a battle she has lost before it even begins. The first tear slowly rolls from her eyes down her cheeks. Then a second. She doesn't sob. She just cries quietly, helplessly. Her jaw unclenches. Her lips, still trembling, slowly, painfully, slowly open. Minho doesn't make any sudden movements. He smoothly lifts the spoon and pours the soup into her mouth. Warmth spreads in her mouth. The taste is perfect. Rich, slightly spicy, with a soft texture. Changmin, as always, cooked it perfectly. It's the same flavor she's tried dozens of times in the kitchen, checking to see if it's good enough, if the additive is subtle enough. She always nods approvingly. Delicious. Changmin. Perfect. Now the taste fills her mouth, and her stomach clenches in a spasm. Her brain, aware of the secret, sends out alarm signals, mixing with the signals from her taste buds. The result is a monstrous, unbearable cocktail. Physically, it's just soup, delicious soup, but now she knows what's hidden in it. She knows the chemical formula. She knows the effect. She knows what it's intended to do. She can't swallow. She sits with her mouth open, full of warm liquid, and chokes. Nausea rises in her throat in a wave, bitter and acrid. Her body instinctively tries to reject this food, like it rejects poison. The tears flow more freely, mixing with the steam on her face. "Swallow," comes his voice, calm, like a doctor supervising an unpleasant but necessary procedure. She tries to swallow. Her throat won't respond. Constricted by a spasm, she chokes again, and some of the soup leaks out the corner of her mouth, rolling down her chin. It's pathetic, humiliating. The whole spoonful, So-yeon. "Don't make me start over." Mustering all her willpower, she squeezes her eyes shut and makes a sharp, convulsive swallow. The warm mass slides down her esophagus, and she feels as if she can feel every inch of it, every degree of warmth, which now carries poison, not just food. Her own betrayal, materialized in the broth and bits of carrot. She opens her eyes, and in them lies more than just disgust or fear. There's complete, utter understanding. Understanding that this poison is now inside her, that the plan she'd been preparing for him has begun to work for her. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. The tears don't stop. They flow down her face in a steady stream, mixing with her makeup, leaving dark streaks on her cheeks. She doesn't sob loudly, doesn't thrash hysterically. She cries quietly and hopelessly, the way one cries from impotent pain. Each sob shakes her shoulders, but her hands lie motionless in her lap, like a pair of dead birds. Minho ignores the tears. For him, they're just a natural byproduct of the process now, like steam from hot food. He sets his spoon down. She finished the soup, slowly, with long pauses, but she finished it. He handed her each spoonful himself, methodically, without rushing. Now he takes a clean plate and places a portion of stewed meat and vegetables on it. The sauce is thick, dark, and aromatic. He places a fork and knife next to it, not for her to cut. He cuts it himself, carving off a neat piece. He spears it with his fork. "Eat," he says, lifting a fork to her lips. His voice sounds like a nurse feeding a capricious but obedient patient. "You wanted me to eat this for weeks, every day at lunch. You brought it yourself, remember? You said the meat was especially tender today. Now it's your turn to appreciate the tenderness." She turns her head away, squeezing her eyes shut. Tears spill from beneath her closed lashes. "I can't," she breathes, and it sounds more like a moan. "You can," he retorts with the same icy logic. "You ordered this dish. You supervised its preparation. You were responsible for its quality. Now, quality control. Sample. Take a bite." He doesn't move the fork, doesn't try to force it into her mouth. He simply waits. And again, that silence, that oppressive, all-consuming silence of the basement, does its job. It's stronger than his words, stronger than his will. It makes him remember every detail, every sweet morning kiss before she brought him that very plate. Slowly, as if against her will, she turns her head back. She opens her mouth. He places a piece of meat in it. An hour passes, maybe more. There's no clock in the basement, and time loses its usual flow. It's measured not in minutes, but in chunks. Silence is the main sound. It is not absolute. It is broken by the soft, measured sound of metal on ceramic. Spoon on plate, pause, fork on the edge of the dish, a long pause, then a quiet, muffled sound of chewing, or an attempt at chewing, then swallowing, often intermittent, choking. Sometimes this rhythm breaks, interrupted by short, suffocating sobs, quiet sobs that So-yeon can no longer contain. She doesn't cry constantly. She cries in waves, when the taste is especially vivid, when memory brings back a particularly vivid image from the past, when the physical revulsion becomes unbearable, but the sound returns, spoon on plate, fork on edge, because the process hasn't stopped, because he, Minho, is sitting across from her and watching, and his silence is a command. She eats. It's no longer an act of will, but something mechanical, automatic. Her body, obeying the unconditional pressure of circumstances and his will, carries out the command. Take, put in mouth, chew, swallow. Her mind is detached from the process. It hovers somewhere off to the side, watching in horror as her own hands he doesn't bind now because there's no need, lift a piece of fish to her mouth, the fish she chose herself at the market, telling the cook, "Take this one. It'll be perfect for him." She eats slowly. Each bite feels like a fist. Each sip requires incredible effort, but she eats, because the alternative is to stay here forever, in this concrete box that smells of dampness and her betrayal, under his silent, all-seeing gaze. Minho sits across from her on the same simple wooden chair. He's not eating, he's not drinking, he's not reading. He is simply sitting and watching. His posture is relaxed, but not casual. His gaze is intense, but not angry. He watches. It's his intention to watch. He doesn't want to miss a single moment, a single emotion on her face. He watches as her initial terror and panic gradually give way to numbness, as her tears go from hot and bitter to mere salty streaks on numb skin. He watches as her lips tremble as she lifts the spoon. He watches as her throat tightens before she takes a sip. He watches as her hopes for a rich life without him, for power, for impunity, slowly, with every spoonful, return to her. But they return not as dreams, but as heavy, poisoned stones that she is now forced to swallow. Each dish is a materialized piece of her betrayal. The stew is her false words of care. The fish is her cold calculation. The side dishes are her daily ritual hypocrisy. He sees the moment when she finally understands this. It's not the first sip. It's somewhere in the middle, when the novelty of the shock has worn off and only the monotonous, exhausting reality of what's happening remains. It's not just disgust or fear that appears in her eyes. Understanding appears, a complete, irrevocable understanding of the symmetry of the punishment. He didn't beat her. He didn't humiliate her harshly. He simply turned her plan against her and forced her to become its main executor. He lets time do its work. The long pauses between courses, when she simply sits, staring into the void before her, feeling the food she's eaten lie heavy and alien in her stomach. That's all part of the plan. It's a time when the body isn't working, but the mind is, and it processes everything that's happened and understands it completely. Minho feels no pleasure. He feels a cold satisfaction from the precision of his execution. He wanted her to understand, to feel, and now, watching her inner world crumble under the weight of her own actions, which she now carries within herself, he sees that the goal has been achieved. She is not simply punished. She is enlightened, cruel, unforgiving, but absolutely accurate. As she slowly, With visible effort, moves toward the fish. Minho begins to speak. His voice remains even, but now it takes on a new tone. Not of anger, but something akin to the regret of an archivist sorting through the documents of a ruined case. Do you remember our first meeting? He asks, watching her try to break apart the white flesh with a fork. In that gallery on Insadong, you were standing in front of an abstract painting, all in black. I asked you what you saw in it. You said, chaos that wants to become order, but is afraid of losing its energy. I thought then, what an extraordinary woman. Smart, a visionary. He pauses, letting the words sink in. She freezes, a piece of fish on her fork. Her eyes, glassy with tears and grief, focus on him for a moment. I trusted you, So-yeon. From the very beginning, I brought you into this house. I opened doors for you that were forever closed to others. You saw my life not from the front door, but from the inside. I thought we would build something together, more than just a marriage, a fortress, a place to be unprotected, a place to relax. He pronounces the last word with particular clarity, and she flinches. She puts her fork back down on her plate, her hand shaking. Remember when we went to Jeju? He continues, as if not noticing her reaction. That storm that caught us in a house by the ocean. You said you could hear a song in the roar of the wind. I laughed, but I felt good. I felt like you were my quiet place, my refuge from everything outside. Every word he says isn't nostalgia. It's a cold inventory. He pulls one bright image after another from the archives of his memory and presents them to her, like an investigator presenting evidence against the backdrop of a crime. Every remember is a hammer blow, driving a nail into the lid of her own coffin. These memories, once warm and dear, now burn her more than any spoonful of soup, because they remind her of what was destroyed. And who destroyed it? She can't eat anymore. She just sits, hunched over, listening to his voice, and every story he tells of trust, of laughter, of plans for the future, weighs down on her like a new burden, the weight of which makes the bones of her soul creak. It's more painful than physical disgust. It's the pain of realizing that everything good and true has been turned into a convenient backdrop for her own destruction. She finishes the last of the side dishes. Only traces of sauce and a few stray grains of rice remain on the plates. She places her spoon on the table. The sound is soft, but in the silence it rings out like a final chord. She doesn't look at him. She looks at her empty hands, lying in her lap. Her entire body is trembling. Fine. Uncontrollable, like when she's very cold. She tries to clench her fingers into fists, but they won't obey, and her fingers just slide helplessly along the fabric of her dress. Silence fills the basement again, but it's different now. Before, it was tense, filled with anticipation of the next move. Now it's empty, burnt out. I'm sorry. The word escapes her on the exhale, quiet, stifled, almost inaudible. It hangs in the cold air, pathetic and belated. She looks up at him. Her face is a blurred mask of mascara, powder, and tears. There's no longer any challenge or calculation in her gaze, only devastation and that same animalistic pleading he's likely seen on the faces of many who've stood before him in similar situations. I was afraid of you, she whispers, her voice breaking. About your life, about your deeds. I thought you'd ever? I don't know. I was wrong. I ruined everything. Just let me go, please. She says this not as an excuse, but as a last desperate attempt to reach something human that she hopes may still remain within him. She offers him the easiest way out, to accept her as a weak, stupid, frightened woman who made a terrible mistake under the pressure of circumstances. This is remorse, torn from fear and humiliation, not a true recognition of guilt, but it is all she has left. Minho slowly rises from his chair. His movements are smooth and unhurried. He approaches the table, glances at the empty plates, then turns his gaze to her. It's not fear, So-yeon, he says. His voice is especially clear now, enunciating each word. Fear is when you hide, when you beg for mercy. Fear is passive. What you did wasn't passive fear. It was an active, deliberate plan. You weren't trying to escape my life. You decided to steal it, to appropriate it, and to quietly eliminate me as a nuisance. He takes a step closer. She doesn't lean back. She just sits, hunched over, still shaking. You knew the rules of our life from the very beginning. You saw what this world is made of. Rule number 1, trust is a wall. He who builds it is protected within it. He who destroys it is left outside, alone with all the dangers he so feared. You destroyed the wall. He glances around the bare, damp basement, the antithesis of their luxurious home. You broke the rules. And breaking the rules always comes with a consequence. Not emotion, not revenge. Consequence. Like gravity. Drop a glass. get shards in a puddle, plan to destroy it, get your poison back. He leans forward, bracing his hands on the table so that his face is level with hers again. There's no anger in his eyes, but a cold, dispassionate clarity. You wanted to play a dangerous game, but you played by your own childish rules, thinking you wouldn't get caught. Now you've sensed the rules of my game. They're simple. You get exactly what you prepared for others. No exceptions, no allowances for gender, fear, or remorse. Your dinner is over. Lesson learned. Minho straightens up, lifting his hands from the table. His figure appears even taller in the dim light of the bulb, casting a long, distorted shadow on the concrete wall. The movement is simple, but there's a certain finality to it, like a surgeon's after completing a complex operation. So-yeon looks up at him. Her eyes are two dark, wet spots on a washed-out face. There are no more tears in them, only a silent, bottomless despair. She doesn't speak, doesn't move. She simply stares, and her entire appearance, her hunched shoulders, her trembling lips, her limp arms, is one continuous, silent plea for mercy. A plea addressed to the void. He looks back, and in his eyes, she finds nothing she knew. No tired tenderness, no businesslike calculation, not even cold fury. All of that is gone, as if erased. All that remains is absolute polar ice, a gaze devoid of any connection to her, as if he were looking at an empty space or an inanimate object that has fulfilled its purpose. In that gaze, she is completely banished from his world. She has become neither an enemy nor a traitor to him, simply nothing. Changmin has already left the city with his daughter, Minho says, his voice distant, like a newscaster reading a news report. My people provided them with new documents and money. They're gone. Forever. He pauses briefly, looking past her into the dark corner of the basement. He had a choice: keep silent and continue, hoping for your mercy, which, as he understood, would end with my life, or come to me and tell me the truth, knowing that the consequences could be anything. He chose the truth. He made his choice at the last possible moment, and it saved him. Now he looks at her again, and something like tired contempt appears in his icy gaze. You made your choice too, So-yeon. Not yesterday. Not when I brought you here. You made it weeks ago, the day you first gave Changmin the vial. Every day since, when you brought me food and smiled. You could have stopped at any moment, but you didn't. You chose the path to the end. And tonight's dinner is simply the logical conclusion of your choice. Not my revenge. Your own arrival at your destination. His words don't require a response. They simply state a fact. He doesn't expect her to understand or truly repent. He simply delivers a verdict. Minho turns and walks toward the door. His footsteps echo loudly in the concrete frame. He doesn't look back. He doesn't say goodbye. He simply reaches the heavy, metal-bound door and grabs the handle. So-yeon sits motionless. She doesn't even follow him with her eyes. She stares straight ahead, at the table laden with empty plates, dirty cutlery, and sauce stains. At the red silk ribbon lying on the edge, like an ironic reminder of the beginning of this nightmare. There's a sharp, piercing creak of rusty hinges, then a dull, heavy thud as the door slams shut. The click of the lock is deafeningly loud, final and irrevocable. The silence descends upon her with a new, indescribable force. It's not just the absence of sound now. It's an active, oppressive emptiness. Not even his presence, his gaze, which somehow structured the space, is there. There's only her, this table, and the heavy, nauseating feeling inside. She slowly moves her gaze from plate to plate. A soup tureen, a deep meat bowl, a fish dish. Each one is now not just a dish, but a monument. A monument to her own baseness, her greed, her monstrous mistake. She understands everything, not with her mind. He's already explained it all. She understands the depth of the betrayal she committed, the depth of the calculation that turned out to be so shallow, the depth of the loneliness she now finds herself in. He didn't tie her up. He didn't lock her in a cage. He simply left, leaving her alone with the only thing she has now is the consequences of her choice. And these consequences are sitting inside her, physically, in the form of the poison she ate, and around her, in the form of this concrete emptiness. She sits, and the emptiness within gradually begins to merge with the emptiness without. Everything she was, everything she aspired to, everything she believed in, has dissolved in this cold, damp darkness, leaving behind only a bitter taste on her tongue and an unbearable heaviness in her stomach. Time in the basement lost all meaning. It could have been an hour, it could have been 5. So-yeon didn't move. She sat staring at a single spot on the wall, frozen in a pose of utter collapse. The trembling had subsided, the tears had dried, leaving only a stony, motionless void. Her body seemed like a lifeless extension of the wooden chair. The door creaked suddenly, making her jump as if struck by electricity. The light from behind the door momentarily blinded her, revealing Minho's figure in the darkness. He entered and closed the door behind him. He looked the same as when he left, collected, calm, in the same dark suit, without a single sign of fatigue or anxiety. He approached the table. She did not raise her eyes to him. "This dinner," he began, his voice a little hoarse in the silence, but still even, "was your last gift from me, So-yeon. Not diamonds, not a car, a lesson." He glanced around at the empty plates. "He should have taught you. There are things that can't be fixed. There is trust that, once broken, can't be mended. There is a price for every choice. And the price of deception, in its most vile form, isn't someone else's pain. It's having to taste that deception on your own lips, to live its consequences inside your body. To understand that everything you cooked for another may one day become your only food." He spoke not to her, but rather into space, stating a fact, as if summing up an experiment. "You know this taste now. You carry it within you. This knowledge is your only baggage. You have nothing else. Not my name, not my home, not my trust. You are free from all of this, just as I am free from you." He turned silently and gestured for her to go to the door. She stood up. Her movements were slow, mechanical, like those of a very old person. Her legs were almost unresponsive, numb from sitting for so long. She walked away without looking back at the table with its dishes. He drove her home in the same car, silently. She sat in the passenger seat, looking out the dark window, but seeing nothing. He looked at the road. No conversation, no glances. They were two strangers who had been accidentally placed in the same car. He stopped at their house, large, dark, silent in the night. He got out and opened the door for her. She went out. He walked toward the entrance, and she followed him at a respectful distance, like a servant. It was quiet inside. He didn't turn on the light in the living room. He simply pointed her toward their bedroom. "You'll stay here until morning. Don't try to call anyone or do anything. It's pointless." His tone left no doubt. She entered the bedroom. The door didn't close behind her. She simply lay down on the bed in her dress and didn't move until dawn, staring at the ceiling. In the morning, just as dawn was breaking, she heard quiet footsteps in the house. Not his, strangers. Two middle-aged, stern-looking men entered the bedroom without knocking. They silently took several travel bags from the wardrobe. Not all her things, just the essentials, packed by someone else. "Let's go," one of them said without intonation. She walked out into the hall. Minho stood there, already dressed for the day. He wasn't looking at her, but out the window, into the garden. When she stopped, he simply turned his head and nodded toward the open front door. Behind the door, at the entrance, stood a black sedan with tinted windows, its engine idling. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't say, "Get out." He made no threats about what would happen if she came back or spilled the beans. Threats were unnecessary. Everything had already been said in the basement. Everything had already been demonstrated. Any word now would only desecrate the purity and cruel clarity of what had happened. He simply pointed to the door, the exit from his life. So-yeon took a step, then another. She stepped out onto the threshold, paused for a moment, but didn't turn around. Then she slowly descended the steps and climbed into the waiting car. The door slammed shut. The car pulled away smoothly, made a U-turn, and disappeared through the gate. Minho stood in the hallway, staring at the empty space where the car had just been. Then he closed the heavy front door. The click of the lock sounded as final as it had in the basement. An hour later, Minho walked out into the garden. It was early, cool morning. The air was fresh and clean. He stood among the roses that So-yeon loved so much. She tended them with such tenderness, such attention to each bud. Now they bloomed, unaware that their mistress was gone. He took a deep breath. The air filled his lungs. Clean, without the metallic taste, without the heavy foreboding. He was alive. His body, slightly weakened but already recovering, obeyed him. The danger was over. The threat that had lived under his roof, eaten at his table, was eliminated. Not physically destroyed, but banished forever. He had won this complex, silent war. He had outplayed it at its own most subtle game. He should have felt triumph, relief, strength. But he stood amid the silence of the morning, and this silence was different. Before, the silence in the house had been filled with her possible presence, the anticipation of her footsteps, the sound of her voice. Now the silence was empty, complete. It was the silence of an abandoned room, where dust settles on the surface and no one blows it away anymore. He won. The price wasn't just marriage or trust. It was the very meaning of home, peace, and intimacy. He burned out the last corner, where he could afford to be not a boss, not a strategist, but simply a human being. From now on, he knew that even the most beautiful smile, the most tender care, could hide poison. And this knowledge left a bitter, heavy residue on his soul, far more persistent than that metallic taste. He glanced at the roses, at their perfect, fragile petals. Then he turned and walked back into the house, to his large, secure, completely empty house. He was safe. But the price of that safety, he now realized, could be equal to the price of life. It was simply paid in a different currency, the currency of loneliness.